Hello, my name is Dr. Jeff Harris, and this is and I'm in New Mexico in the southwestern part of the United States. This is my colleague Karunika Rao in Bangalore, India. Um, this is a video demonstration of Key Strategies Training Lesson 4, Exploring Feelings Using Emotion-Focused Strategies. So hopefully you've watched, before watching this demo video, hopefully you watched the Lesson 4 didactic video, which describes different ways to explore feelings. So in that video, we described 4 different strategies for emotional exploration. The first one was focusing on emotions. The second one is understanding the impact of emotions. The third key strategy is analyzing the adaptive value of emotions. And the fourth strategy is discovering emotional patterns outside of awareness. So I'm going to be doing a demonstration. Karunikar is going to be portraying a socially anxious client named Raju. And so I'm going to be using I'm going to be trying to move through these strategies. As you watch the demonstration, you may want to see what things I'm doing to implement all of these strategies. I may not do all of them perfectly. We want to demonstrate these, but in somewhat of a natural flow. So I'm going to recommend that you try and see which strategies you see me demonstrate. And then at the end of the video, we'll come back to this list to talk about what you may have observed. So Raju, we've been talking about your social anxiety, and we've been talking about some of the thoughts about being judged, or that people will notice deficiencies about you. Today, I want to focus on your emotions related to your social anxiety. When you feel anxious and when you don't want to be around other people, what emotions do you think contribute to your anxiety?
Yeah, I get nervous when I am in the presence of others, and feel apprehensive.
It makes sense that you're nervous and apprehensive. When you feel, I think of apprehension as a kind of a low level of fear. Do you experience that apprehension or nervousness or anxiety as a type of fear, or are there other emotions going on as well?
So it's a kind of fear.
So when you feel afraid, particularly about being around other people, do you know what you're afraid of? What part of being around other people is fearful for you?
Afraid of being insulted or shamed in the
Okay.
public.
So you're afraid of being insulted or shamed. So that's interesting because it brings up a different emotion of shame. So you're afraid of the social interactions, but you're also afraid that the social interaction, if people insult you, you might feel ashamed.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's good to know that in some ways your fear is related to this different emotion of shame. So it'll be important for us to
Yes.
look at fear and shame as different emotions. So when you feel fearful and fearful of being feeling ashamed because you're insulted, how does that impact your actions? Is that how does your fear and the fear of shame impact your actions?
I mostly avoid these social situations in which I have to interact with people.
Okay. Well, yeah,
And
talked about that a little bit about how the behavioral strategy, the action strategy is to avoid social situations so you don't feel insulted or ashamed. So with the
yes,
fear, I'm curious, do you know how your fear impacts your thoughts? when you're afraid, does that generate thoughts about social interactions?
Because of fear, I think uh, I expect that people are going to insult me, and uh, I can falter in front of people. I may make mistakes, um, and I think I'm not good looking. I'm lean and thin, so I think all these things when I am in the situation.
Okay. So obviously the people are going to insult me is the central part of the fear. It's interesting, the idea that I will make mistakes. That's the funny thing about being anxious or nervous, is that if you are anxious about making mistakes, that anxiety often creates more mistakes. And we talked about some of the stammering of whatever. And so if you say, I hope I don't stammer when I talk to this person, in that unfortunate way, that anxiety increases the likelihood that you're going to stammer, and then that fear that people will perceive you as not good looking. So so I think it's important to notice that the fears associated with these thoughts about being insulted or making mistakes or being perceived as not attractive, and that the avoidance is the behavioral manifestation of the fear. So the next question I'm curious about, Raju, is, does your fear help you? Does it serve a helpful purpose in your life?
No, because of fear, I am more and more avoiding meeting people, and I am remaining most of the time indoors. Uh,
So
my
okay, so your fear restricts you. So the fear and the avoidance restrict you, and you're staying isolated.
and because of this fear, when I am speaking to people, I speak faster and I make mistakes also while speaking.
Okay, so yeah, so there's that paradoxical effect that we're beginning to look at, that the fear of making mistakes increases your chances of making mistakes. The fear of stammering and being inarticulate increases the chance of stammering. So it interferes with social interactions, with social context. But I'm I'm curious, does your fear protect you from danger? So we talked a little bit about the purpose of different emotions. So fear is ideally, fear helps us protect us from danger. So with you, do you think that your fear helps protect you from danger?
There is no such danger as such, but I feel is it may lead to insult.
Right. And so again, fear, if your fear is making you perceive these social interactions as dangerous, even though another part of your mind knows that they're not dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important to realize about social anxiety, that the fear of being insulted is a really profound feeling for many people. However, on the other hand, being insulted usually doesn't threaten our physical well-being. So it feels more, so that idea of fear of being insulted, fear of being shamed, feels very dangerous, but it
Yes,
usually doesn't threaten our physical well-being.
not physical, not
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah.
It
So
doesn't.
that as we're looking at that idea, does my fear protect me from danger? We want to say that being insulted or feeling ashamed feels awful, but it usually doesn't threaten our physical well-being, even though it may threaten our emotional well-being or our social well-being. So so I think it's
Yeah.
important to look at the fear and the shame, or the fear of feeling ashamed, and in the context of danger. But I'm wondering, with your social anxiety, are there other issues involved? So the fear, results in avoidance, and so are there any other emotions related to the social anxiety that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah. Well, because of this fear, um, I don't meet anyone and I remain in my room. Um, when I remain in my own room, not going outside, I also feel isolated, lonely, but
Sense.
I cannot go out.
That makes sense. That part of your mind says people are going to insult me, and that creates some fear, which creates some avoidance, but then that avoidance and isolation then results in feeling lonely because you don't meet anyone and you stay in your room. And so in some ways, I each emotion that we feel has kind of has a behavioral expression. So it's almost, I wonder if it's almost like loneliness. Fear keeps you away from people, but loneliness draws you toward people. So in the way that fear is designed to protect us, loneliness is supposed to motivate us to reach out. And so in your situation, Raju, I'm seeing that the fear, isolates you, but then you feel lonely because another part of you wants to reach out and have those connections. So I think
Yes,
it's
yes.
so I think it's important, as we look at your social anxiety, that we pay attention to this fear. We pay attention to the shame, that what some of what you're afraid of is the shame, but that the avoidance and the isolation that you are doing to avoid being insulted or being judged, or that's resulting in isolation that's making you feel lonely. So I think it'll be important so in some ways it'll be important to pay attention to that loneliness as a clue that you may need to reach out more, but it may be important to figure out how to reach out to people in ways that you're less likely to be insulted or ashamed. So what I'd like you to do during the coming week is to pay attention to that fear. And if when you feel afraid, I want you to think about, is the situation I'm afraid of, is it really dangerous? I want you to be aware of that shame when that comes up, because I think that's a really, shame is a really primal emotion. But I also want you to pay attention to that loneliness that may be drawing you out, and and we think of loneliness as that negative part about, I don't like being isolated, but I'm going to encourage you to pay attention to the the upside of loneliness, which may be attachment. Is there a part of me that wants to feel attachment? Do I feel drawn to some people? So I want us to be aware of that, the tension between fear that keeps away from people, but loneliness and attachment that may draw you towards some people. And then I think as we move forward, it'll be important to figure out if what kinds of feelings we may want to embrace other than the fear and the shame.
Yeah, I will try to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Raju.